I'd like to call this special meeting of the Dalton Selectboard to order, please. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General 30A and 20, and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of Dalton Select Board will be conducted via remote participation. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch in the open session portion of the meeting may do so by viewing on Dalton Community TV, channel 1301, or via Zoom. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the open session portion of the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite our best efforts, we will post on the town website an audio or video recording, transcript, or any other comprehensive record of the proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. All right, if we all can stand for the pledge, those who are able, and Mark, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of
the United
States of America,
and to the
republic for which it stands,
one
nation,
nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, gentlemen. Tonight's our last interview, and Monday we'll get together. If we reach a decision, I would suggest that it would have to be pending reference checks and a background check. Is everybody in agreement to that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and suggestions of how we should do this. Should we just go through candidates and list their strengths? Each one will just make like a score sheet? Or do you just want to just have open discussion?
I think if people want to make their own score sheets and then have an open discussion on who you support or I think that's the route we should go down, is who you want to support and who you think would be the best fit.
Okay. Does everybody agree with that?
Yes.
Okay, then that's what we'll do. Thank you, Mark. Okay. Yeah, John.
Talking about pending appointment. It should an appointment should be contingent upon reaching a salary agreement contract or a contract.
Absolutely. Yeah,
More.
plus the other things.
And do we want to stipulate that, and this happens occasionally with other towns I see, that in the event you can't reach a contract suitable to both the applicant and the town, then do we go to the second choice?
Absolutely.
Or is there a second
That's
choice?
what my vote would be, John. We go to the second choice.
So we want to be prepared when we do make a decision that we have our number one choice and our number two choice.
Absolutely.
Or you go back to the recruitment process
we
again if you don't have a clear number two, right?
Right.
And yeah, because we don't want to start this all over again. In the event we couldn't reach it. Okay. All right. Just so we're clear up front with everybody. Everybody knows.
Bridge if we go again, let me tell you.
Yeah, just to clarify, you may end up going through the whole process. We don't have a number two agreement, right? So just to make sure.
Right. We should have a number two candidate. I would assume we would.
Can I make a point?
Go ahead, Sandy.
So if you come up with a number one and you really like that person, you might want to be compromising a little bit on one thing or the other. If you really are entertaining and really like one person, over the other. So.
Yeah, of course, that gets into negotiations.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
I agree with Joe. That's part of negotiating, but sometimes people just don't want to negotiate. This is what I want. If I don't get this, I don't want the job.
Yeah.
All right, and then we got to talk about who's going to negotiate with the town manager. So I think somebody from the finance committee should be there, and probably two members of the select board. Would you think?
I'm not sure about that.
Thoughts, gentlemen?
I would agree with that.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well, Bob.
Okay, would it be okay if Joe and John Boyle do the, if you guys are agreeable to do the negotiating?
How about, I know Joe's tied up with the police chief thing. I'd be willing to do it with Mr. Boyle.
Okay, why don't you do that then? Okay,
Bob, who is Sandy gonna be the lead negotiator?
I don't think so.
no, we'll get somebody from the finance committee. We'll get Billy or somebody from the finance committee. Or, you know, we'll reach out to somebody from, maybe Dawn. Would Dawn be interested in it? I don't know, I thought I saw her on. But we'll figure that out down the road. We'll get, as long as we got the two guys from the select board, we'll get somebody from finance on there, okay? All right, Sandy, we can let Mr. Flaherty in.
Okay. I let him in. Dave, are you there?
He's on mute still. There you
Yep,
go.
I'm coming in. All right. Hi.
Welcome, David.
Hi.
Would you like to be called Dave or David?
Dave is great.
Okay. All right, Dave, we're going to put you through the gauntlet here.
Okay.
And we're all going to take turns. And at the end, you know, you're going to have a chance to ask us questions also, okay?
Great.
And thank you for being one of our finalists. We appreciate it. My name is Bob Bishop. I'm the current chair. And I will start off the questionings. Can you please take 2 to 3 minutes for an opening statement?
Sure. Well, thank you to Select Board and to the Screening Committee. I know this is not an easy task, and I appreciate all the effort. As you probably know, I've been following you for many months. I've sat in on many of your meetings and watched many more on tape. So I'm kind of familiar with this team here, the personalities, the way the Select Board works, and I appreciate the consideration here. I think as we go through this tonight, hopefully you've seen my resume. You might have watched the tape of the other interviews. I sent you a ton of links to articles that I've written in the paper and some videos and things like that to try to help you get a better feel for me, because I know how hard that is to do in a 1-hour meeting. So hopefully you got a chance to see that stuff. I've been in government for, this is my 6th term, so I'm in my 12th year as a city council in Westfield. I've been self-employed for about 25 years. Many of my customers over that time have been government agencies that I've given you references for, or some projects, and I'll probably give some of those as examples later on. What else? I'm very active in the community, and I know many of you are too. I have 2 kids. My kids are now older, so I have a 24-year-old who graduated Babson and is working out in Boston, but right now he's at home with us because his office over there closed, so he's doing everything remotely. I have a 19-year-old junior at UMass who's living at home with us still. He actually just got a job as the legislative aide for a state rep. He ran for state rep in the last election and lost, but the guy that won actually hired him as the legislative aide, so that's kind of neat. My interests have been, you know, all over the place. I'm very active in the community. Like I said, I've been active as a volunteer for many organizations, mostly for Boy Scout type things. I play racquetball, pickleball, do a lot of backpacking, skiing, golf, and a lot of, like I said, volunteer time in the community. So I hope after this hour, you'll get to know me a little bit better, and I hope near the end, you can make a decision. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Okay, now, what attracted you to the position of Dalton Town Manager?
A couple things. First, I should tell you, this is the only position I've applied for. I'm not throwing resumes out everywhere. I'm not looking for just any job. I specifically targeted Dalton, and I talked to the selection committee about that a little bit. I'm looking for a place that's I'm thinking about a 10-year time frame. I think Dalton is a great community. I've been through many times on the Appalachian Trail. I've been up playing baseball with the kids. I've come through town when I've gone to some clients over in Pittsfield, and the town has always been, pretty impressive to me. It's a well-maintained town. It's welcoming. Simple things like flowers on the street and lights and things like that make a difference. As we're wandering around and even like playing baseball and stuff, the recreational facilities are in great shape. The neighborhoods are, nice. The people were very nice. So I think that the character and the culture of the town, made it attractive to me. And then as far as how I targeted, I'm looking for, like I said, an executive, job in city government. I've been on the city council for a while. The mayor in our town is an elected position. I've been asked many times to run, but because I'm a small business owner, I couldn't see running for a 2-year term and then not getting reelected or going through the hassle of getting reelected every 2 years. So I've always kind of said, I want to wait until I'm thinking about moving on from my private business before I get in that role. So when I did that, I looked around for the cities and towns in Western Mass that I thought were appropriate based on kind of the size. So I'm kind of thinking towns that are, 5 to 15,000 people, 6 to 16,000 people, decent budgets, and Dalton is on my list. And I was watching the meeting early this year when, Ken resigned, kind of short notice, and I thought this would be a good opportunity. Like I said, I haven't shotgun the resumes out there. I'm looking for the right fit for me, the right fit for you. And if this doesn't work out, I'll target another, specific town. But I'm just not throwing resumes waiting for a job offer. I have plenty of things to do, and I personally believe this is a great fit. I wouldn't have wasted all this time. I've been, as you probably know, I've been talking to your people since about August. So I'm not taking this half-hearted. I've sat in a lot of your meetings. I've done a ton of research. I have piles of paperwork that I think are relevant, that can help me get up and running quickly. And I really think this is going to be a good fit.
All right, thank you, David. Dave. What qualities and expertise do you have that would convince us that you would be a successful Dalton town manager?
Oops, I have pages of notes here because I've been following you guys for a while. So I think it's the right fit. I looked at your job description. I heard your, discussions about this job. I've, read a lot of what you're trying to do. And I think I have the right fit of, government side, business side, economic development, certainly technology side. These are all things that you seem to be looking for in a town manager. You repeatedly asked about communication stuff. So as you've seen from some of the stuff I've sent you, I spend a ton of time communicating with citizens and other boards and, elected people. And I'll talk about that more with you, your other questions. I think I'm a long-term thinker and planner. I don't take things, half-hearted. I go all in. I do think about things for quite a while before I do them. Not that I'm slow, but I'm very thorough and meticulous about the way I do things. I'm very confident that I can do this job here for you. And if I wasn't, I wouldn't be wasting your time or my time. So I think that's an important thing. I've watched enough of your meetings to know that there's a few things that I can help you with to help, your meetings and processes, and maybe save you a little time or help steer the conversations a little bit. I also like the role that I think your select board has with the town manager compared to other places. To me, it seems like you have a collaborative relationship with the town manager, more of the role of an executive and an executive board, rather than a team of dictators that are, telling the manager what to do all day. And in some towns, that creates a big problem. So that's why I asked you those questions earlier in the selection process about how you set goals and manage the town manager. But from what I've seen, through your meetings here, it sounds like Mr. Walto had a collaborative relationship with you, and then you guys were the approving body, and that you work together to solve problems, rather than having 5 individual select people, all with their own visions, telling the town manager what to do it, 5 different ways. That creates big problems in some towns, and I'm happy to see that you don't have that problem here. I understand the role that you're looking for. I've been in your position, in hiring and hiring people. I've also worked with tons of boards and commissions and understand the relationships there and all the different pieces. I'm somebody who believes in continuous improvement, so I'm always looking for getting better. You know, I read 6 to 10 books a month. I'm always doing things to improve my skills in a variety of ways, and I believe we should be doing the same for employees and our service to the citizens. I'm never really satisfied we're 100% done. There's always room for improvement, and I'm always looking for ways to do that. So I think that's important to you. I'm also creative in ways that I think you're going to need. I've listened. Should I call you by your first name or your last name, Mr.?
Oh, always first name.
Okay, so I've listened to John, and John, I think we're going to get along great. But you know, John has talked about the role of the town manager as it relates to the school and the water and the sewers and other things in town compared to other cities and towns in Western Mass. And I think he's right technically, but also that there's room for improvement in the relationships between those bodies. For example, the school department is, you know, more than half of your budget right now, and the town manager has to be, you know, very in tune with that school budget and do what he can to influence that school budget. And there are many ways that I haven't heard you guys talk about that I've been thinking about as ways to help with that process. In Westfield, I'm very active at budget time and in long-term thinking, and the schools in particular sometimes don't appreciate my input, but it's always based on what's best for the community and what's best for our finances. I can give you an example. In Westfield, for example, we've closed some schools. So in my 11 years on council, we've lost 950 kids in the population of students. We've closed 2 schools. We've laid off 100 staff, but our budget is up $10 million for schools. So you would think, hearing those stats, that the budget should be close or going down, but in reality, the budget's up $10 million in schools. So I'm always pressing them to find ways to do things a little bit better and reduce the costs while delivering great services. One of the schools that closed was at the college. We have Westfield State University in town, and we were renting a school there for many, many years. We had a long-term contract that was on our option to renew, and the school board decided not to renew it strategically so that they would force the town into approving the building of a brand new school. We have some older schools they wanted to consolidate and close down, and it wasn't going well, so they thought they'd add more pressure. And one of the tactics was to not renew a lease. So obviously people in town were very upset about that, and they were losing their school. It was one of the best rated schools in town. But it turns out that the town of Russell, right next door to us, 12 minutes away from this school, had recently closed their school. They were in a regional school district. They had a brand new remodeled school. They owed a fortune on it, and it was sitting there idle. So even though I wasn't on the school committee, I took it upon myself to go up there representing the city of Westfield and the city council to request that the town of Russell enter an agreement with Westfield to lease their school. So it worked out great. The timing was perfect. Some people aren't happy because their kids had to take a bus and get out of town to go to school, but it did save us from the problem we were facing. And it just took a little bit of being creative and working outside the box to go ask them, hey, you got a school sitting there empty. Why not lease it to us, and it will solve our problem, give you some money, and help you pay off your bond for this school. So that worked out great. So I think I can do things like that for you that will impact schools. Another thing in schools to worry about is your OPEB. I know on the city side, you're taking care of OPEB. On the school side, you have some exposure there. And I think you have to look at your agreement with the other communities in the school district to make sure that you're not paying for somebody else's OPEB obligation. These people, or these towns, went many years without paying for their long-term health care. And all of a sudden that bill is coming due, and you don't want to be stuck with an unfair burden. So I think you want to look at that calculation. So I think I can give you a lot of more examples if you want to ask questions later, but I'll let you move on to the next question.
Okay, Joe, you're up. Thank you, David.
Hey, Dave. Joe
Hey.
Diver, Vice Chair of the Select Board here, and I've been on the committee for the board about a little bit over a year. Been a town resident 15 years, originally from the eastern side of the state. And day job is I lead Bay State Health's digital health strategy. And so first question I have is related to financial stewardship. Describe your experience managing town budgets, capital projects, including project bidding experience.
Okay, so question number 4. So, you know, as a city council, we don't manage the, you know, the management is done by the mayor. The city council, in our case, approves the budget or denies appropriations. In my case, I've been the chair of long range finance for 8 years. We look at the longer range capital plans and bonding requests. I was on the finance team the first 5 years I was on city council. I know the budget inside and out, and many of the line items in there, you know, off the top of my head. I typically prepare a 5-year budget. The city prepares a 1-year budget. I typically prepare a 5-year budget as part of my normal process. So as we get into the spring, I'm always, you know, pulling off the last year and putting on a new year on my 5-year plan and making adjustments based on what I see is happening. And that helps us, you know, prepare for the future and think about things before they happen. So I've done that quite a bit. In my private business, I've managing, you know, projects that are, you know, significant, probably not as big as Bay State Health, but very significant in the utility business industry with the Registry Motor Vehicles, Mass Turnpike, lots of government agencies, water and sewer projects around town. Let's see. I'm familiar with, you know, all the purchasing and contracting requirements of the state. And a recent example of something that you asked about town budgets, but you just went through your tax setting meeting back in December, and we were a little bit ahead of you by, you know, not by much, by about a week or so, but going into that tax setting time, there's a process called a recap, and the finance team in the city has to prepare a recap that gets approved by the state. Well, the recap that was submitted to the state in draft mode was off by $5.1 million. And nobody seemed to know. You would know if it's off by 5.1 million, I would think, but I found the $5.1 million. I reached out to the right people. In our case, it's auditor. We have a city auditor. We don't have an accountant. City auditor who was new on the job. She had just started this year after the last budget process. So things were different from where she came from previously. We have a new mayor who's not a financial person at all, and a treasurer who doesn't get involved until this thing is certified. So I reached out to the right people, told them what the problem was with the 5.1 million. We fixed that. Basically, we had to spend over $4 million more to have a zero tax increase, which I know you guys want to hear a zero tax increase after what you guys voted on, but we were in a position where we were very conservative last year at budget time. And then the state came through with more state aid than expected. We had cut 14% of our state aid. And we also had higher revenues on things. Our local receipts, we estimated conservatively, and we got extra money in local receipts. So we had about 5.1 off. We gave the mayor several options to think about. And the one we ended up choosing was to stick $4.3 million into our stabilization account. And even doing that, we had a zero tax increase. So it's kind of a long story, but I think you need people like that who know the underlying details. And that.
Let me revisit your answer, because I'm just looking for the experience in managing town budgets, capital projects, and project bidding. It sounds like you have that experience through committee.
Yes, yeah. The mayor of the town manages the process, but in like many cities, there's a purchasing agent and auditors and things that manage the whole process. Okay. So in our case, you know, as a city councilor, I try to steer and influence that from my role as city council. Okay,
let me go to the next question. Thanks, Dave.
Sure.
What is your experience developing and executing the master plan, and how do you coordinate those resources?
So again, the master plan in our case is controlled by the planning board, and I believe in yours as well. I've read your master plan. I looked at all the to-do items, and I believe it's a good plan. The Westfield plan isn't updated as much as yours. Ours is older than yours, believe it or not. But I understand the process. I certainly have done plenty of long-term plans for my businesses and for other state agencies we work with. We've had all kinds of deployment plans for things that you know, affect various government agencies. I don't think it's a problem whatsoever in your case. I've looked at it. I understand where you're coming from. I guess
the question, Dave, just be more clear. How do you coordinate those resources and set the priorities for the team to go ahead and execute?
So, okay. Well, I've looked at your priorities. Some of them are already marked off. I sent you guys a question about that because you asked for the town manager to be involved in a lot of those items, and a lot of them you can't do them all at once. There's just not enough time and not enough resources. So I think whoever your town manager is has to work with the select board and the planning board to determine what the priorities are, and then go after those priorities, you know, in the appropriate order and the appropriate amount of time. As far as coordinating the resources of designing and developing the plans, I think right now that lies with the planning board, and they need some guidance. I'm not sure how.
Question is
active
more
you-
of execute. It's more of executing from a town
Execute.
manager, executing from a town manager leadership position, Dave.
Yeah, so I would imagine that you, the select board and me would go through the list and come up with a list of priorities. And then I would put together the right teams to implement things.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Next question is, please describe your approach to working with local, state, and federal agencies to augment town resources required to achieve goals. And what is your strategy to apply for grants?
Okay. I'm trying to find your question. What question number is that?
We moved them around because.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, Dave, we
Number
moved them around to
6.
categorize them in this kind of approach of us each asking
Okay.
questions. So
Okay, no problem. So question number, so I just put little notes on each one of them so I don't talk about the same thing twice. So I think, you know, I have a great track record of working with the different groups, local, state, and federal. Obviously, not being executive side, I don't have the same skills, but I have the same experience with the relationship building, and I think that's what you need here. I think networking with the appropriate people is the thing you really need. You need to know what's going on from these other agencies. So you have to work with, you know, the different people in government. So in our case, Karen Polito was one of the most important people for small towns in Massachusetts. You have Deb Baronsky, who's a Western Mass Development Office person. You know, I've worked with chambers, I've worked with green communities, the House and Senate. And I know people, you know, they're in the various roles, and then I can pick up the phone and call and get things done. And I think that's what you need. You need to know some of this stuff ahead of time. You asked about grants in this question and another one. Everybody wants more money for free and wants to be able to get these grants. And there's a process and a timeline for many of them. And you have to know that stuff ahead of time. Some of these things take months to prepare. For example, some of them just closed in December. So you guys are out of luck until next December. You know, you can prepare, but you're not going to be on the grant award cycle. So I think those relationships are the most important thing to help you get those things from the city, you know, the other groups that you're asking about.
So just to expand on that, have
Sure.
you applied for grants on behalf of the town or within your business for any nonprofits you worked for?
Oh, yeah.
Successfully
Yeah. So, yeah.
people
So
can-
I've been on both sides of grants. So I've been a grant applicant, a grant provider, and a grant consultant writing the specifications to receive grants for other agencies. So sometimes my government clients have hired me to write the grants that then they go out and apply for. In the case of Westfield and nonprofits, I do a lot of fundraising for groups. So a recent example is the Westfield 350. So we had a 350th anniversary party in Westfield. It was a big year-long event. And I was in charge of two rather large activities. One was a pancake breakfast for 4,000 people that we scaled for. And the other was a geocaching event where stuff was hidden all around town. Those required, you know, getting donations from businesses in town, getting buy-in from them to help us pay for these and fund the events. We gave free tickets to the kids in school by, you know, raising the money. So I was very active in that. I recruited, you know, probably 90% of the money for those events, and then managed the events going, you know,
Okay,
through
thank you, Dave.
deployment. Yep, thank you.
Okay, John, you're up.
Okay, thank you. Dave, welcome to Dalton, even it's only by a Zoom meeting. We appreciate your being here. I have a couple of quick questions.
Sure.
Could you describe your approach to managing staff and department heads? What practices have you put into place to assure accountability?
Sure. So I think the most important thing is having a common vision of what the expectations are and what the priorities are of the town. And as I mentioned, I think it's, in this case, it has to be a collaborative effort between the town manager, select board. You have priorities that you want me to implement, and I have to make sure that everybody in town buys into that and that we all work towards that goal. I think as far as managing on a day-to-day basis, I'm not a nitpicker. I'm likely to give people assignments and responsibility and set expectations, follow up and offer to help, follow up when it's necessary to make sure that progress is being made. I think regular scheduled meetings for long-term things are very important. You don't see a general going to a sergeant in the Army asking them to do something specific. You go through the chain of command, and that helps keep everybody focused on what they are and make sure the right people are in the know. I think professional development is important in many ways. You can't expect people to grow without offering them the chance they need to learn new skills. Things are changing all the time. Technology certainly, and in other parts of the state like the finance rules and engineering, the process now, a lot of it is grant process for some of the engineering work you need rather than a project basis. So I think it's important to get people up to speed and keep them there. I think it's important for the staff to have the right tools to do their job. I know you've recently started upgrading a lot of technology, but some places have a hard time with that, and some people don't want to spend the money on infrastructure. And I think it's necessary. If you expect the people to do the job, they need the tools to do the job the right way. And I'm someone who believes in getting them that. I don't want to see a $65,000 person, inefficient and unhappy every day they come to work because they don't have a $2,000 computer and piece of software. So I think that's an important thing here. In project planning, I'm certainly very good at tracking. You asked about assuring accountability. We do both project work and time and materials work. And for every job I've done in the last 25 years, we have to track time in a way that satisfies the customer's requirements and make sure that we do the payroll the right way and keep the project on budget and all that kind of stuff. So we have an extensive project management tracking system. The city in Westfield doesn't have it. I'm not sure what Dalton has for time tracking, but that's kind of an important part. You want to be able to track what's going on and make improvements where necessary to make sure we hit the deadlines and goals. For performance review, I think you need periodic activity reports and periodic performance reports. I know the town manager here is responsible for that, but I think the department heads also have to be responsible for everybody that works underneath them. I don't think it's fair to, the town manager, again, to skip a level to try to do a performance appraisal. I think that's something appropriate for the department head. I think in the town's case, you have a pretty tight staff. So I think one of the most important things is having some kind of redundancy and having a succession plan. If one of your employees won the megabucks last week and decided to go away, you want to make sure that that's not going to shut the town down. So I think having the redundancy, cross-training, and succession plan is very important. As far as discipline goes, you have an issue right now in one place. And I'll tell you, in Westfield, we're dealing with a similar issue in our fire department that you have in your police department. That's why I couldn't make last Thursday's meeting. We had an executive session with law department related to that matter. But I think one of the most important things that we learn as a personnel manager or leader is that you have to have written policies. You have to follow them all the time and be consistent, because as soon as you're not, then you get into legal trouble and potential lawsuits. The labor contracts have various clauses in them. For example, your police labor contract might be completely separate from your DPW contract in the way they handle things. So it's very important for your leaders to know that and make sure they follow the correct procedures when dealing with accountability. So hopefully did that cover you?
Okay, thank you, Dave. And the end of your statement dovetails nicely with my next question. Could you describe your current role with labor negotiations and collective bargaining union negotiations?
Yes. So again, as a city councilor, we approve or deny labor contracts. We can try to influence things, but the negotiation process is up to the executive branch. In our case, we typically have outside legal assistance. I have looked at dozens and dozens of labor contracts over the years. I'm generally in a position where I'm questioning things before we approve them. The law requires us to know the expense of the contract before we approve it. And I'm always asking for those contracts to be costed out. Sometimes the negotiators don't think about the cost of the contract. They just promote, well, this is a 022 contract without thinking about what that really costs to the city. So over the years, I've been extremely aggressive in making sure that the public is aware and the other council is aware of what the cost of these things are before we agree to them. I'll tell you a little story. Have you heard about Methuen? No. So Methuen signed a new police contract, and the new police contract was floated in the community. And I know, Mark, you're a policeman, so but you might have heard of this.
I've heard of it.
Yeah. So in Methuen, the contract was promoted as 022. So 0% first year, 2% second, 2% third. But what the town neglected to do was, or city neglected to do, was to do the cost out and figure out what it was. There were escalators built at every level in the contract so that the sergeants got more than the patrol officers, and the lieutenants got more than the sergeants, and the captains got more than lieutenants by massive factors. And it basically would have accounted, so estimated salary for captains was $432,000 a year by the time this contract was worked out, even though it was floated into the community and into the council as a 022 contract. So it caused significant problems with their budget. It got investigated by the Office of Inspector General. The Office of Inspector General said that the mayor and the city council violated state laws, failed to comply with municipal rules, and breached their fiduciary responsibility to the town of Methuen. The process was deeply flawed in negotiating and approving contract, and it demonstrated reckless disregard for their duty to the residents of Methuen to safeguard taxpayer funds. That's because they didn't do the homework and investigate this contract before they signed it. Unfortunately, that happens too often in Westfield as well. Again, I'm trying always to produce the costs and do the homework. But many times it turns into, a social pressure game or a, friends and family game to approve these contracts and sell it as a 022 or 122 case. And it really doesn't do the citizens justice. So I'm a big fan of costing those things out. A recent example in Westfield, 2019, where all of our contracts were up, we had about 15 of them coming in 1 year. Again, it was a 122 contract, and I was opposed to it because of what the thing added up to. So a 122 contract, when you add in the other escalators that are in there, such as shift premiums and years of service and steps in the school system, and our fire and police have steps, longevity, all that. So over the 3 years of that contract, our total cost of the city was increasing $10 million by the third year. Yet taxpayers wouldn't know that. They were being presented with 122, and the employees were out there putting pressure on, saying, hey, don't we deserve 1%? Like we're awesome employees. Can't you justify 1%? And in reality, you have to turn that 122 into real dollars. And in our case, that was $10 million increase by the third year to the city budget. And you have to think about those things. There's a lot of stuff in these contracts. In our case, we also have severance buyout. When somebody leaves, we have to pay them a lot of money. There's a very good health insurance in town. So for example, retired teachers pay about 10% for their insurance for life. So there's some sweetheart things in these contracts that need to be costed out and explained before we sign them. So hopefully that take care of you.
Great answer, Dave. Thank you.
Thanks.
Just one more quick question.
Sure.
I know my colleagues got a lot of questions and time is flying by. Correct me if I'm wrong. Did you say earlier in the discussions that your business career, you are putting it behind you so you could take a municipal job? Does that mean that you're no longer going to be owning and operating a business?
No, I think that's up for discussion. I think I have to have a plan of migration. I have had this business for a while. Neither of my kids want to be involved in it. I have a couple of employees. One of them is likely to take it over, but it's not going to be on day one. So I think as we go through the process, if I get that far, that's something I'm going to want to talk to you about during contract negotiations. Your job description does allow for those kind of things, and I think that's something that should be thrown into the mix. I'm in a place now where I've kind of got what I consider a lifestyle business, which, some of you have been around long enough to know that, you kind of fade and do what's needed, but I'm not aggressively trying to build a business. For the last couple of years, I've been thinking about getting out of it and moving on. And now this is a good opportunity. My kids are, older. I don't have the same commitment level, for their activities and other things in town. So yes, I would transition, but I think there's going to be some kind of a transition time. And I'm certainly not looking to do anything during working hours for Dalton. So if I have a job with you that's 40 hours a week for 4 days, that's what I expect to do. And the way I have things set up right now, that's certainly very doable.
Cool.
All right.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
You're very honest about your situation. We appreciate it.
Yeah, and like I said, I wouldn't be doing this. I wouldn't be wasting your time if I didn't think this was a good fit. I have, very high level of confidence that this could all work out for everybody.
You made some very good points about in contract negotiations that we should cost out these proposals that we initiate into the discussions and sign.
Oh yeah,
And
I have a lot of
one of the
stories.
things, admittedly, it's one of the things we've never really done. You 1, 2, 2, or 2, 2, 3. It doesn't sound like much. But when you add in all the cost escalators, it can be a lot. We've never totally costed out a contract and its impact.
No,
Total impact. Yeah, you make a very good point.
That's important.
Mr.
Thank you.
Chairman, I have a follow-up question on that point.
Sure.
there. Dave, can you talk about your experience leading that contract process? Because that's a key element to the question of really managing day-to-day operations in that whole process.
Yeah, so again, in a city structure, the city council is not involved in the negotiation of the contract. The mayor is responsible, and then he proposes things to the city council, and then we approve or deny or try to influence things. So we don't have direct communication with the union leadership. It's extremely rare for even the mayor to be involved at that level, where it's usually outsourced. In your case, you've only got a handful of employees and unions. I don't see it as a big problem to negotiate from the standpoint of what is expected. I know John has talked about what does that really mean to negotiate, and you've asked about experience in negotiation. Well, what does that look like to you? Because your unions may be coming at you with a one-page sheet of a list of what they want, and you may have a work list or a goal list, and then you negotiate from those two lists and you come together with a solution. I hope it's not too contentious. From what I've seen, that you might have one of them that's a problem, but I haven't read anything or seen anything that there's much contention.
Yeah, it's not contention, Dave. It's just I'm looking for your experience and actually in that process. As
Yeah, no, I can tell you that. Okay. Yeah, I can tell you that I have read every single labor contract and understand all the details far better than many people who do the actual negotiation. I've met with particularly on the school system side, because they look for me to support their efforts. So I have met with this teachers union representatives outside of the scope of my duties to make sure that they understand the city's perspective and that I understand their perspective. You're going to have a motion coming up soon related to schools that is an early buyout incentive, and it's taking place across the state potentially. Hold on one second. So what they're looking to do is allow teachers to retire 5 years early, give them an extra 5 years credit, retire early. The plan that they're proposing would put enormous responsibility on the cities and towns and create a wave of retirements and hiring into a system that's already pretty fragile. So for example, if all of a sudden you had to come up with 5 years of severance instead of 1 year, 1 year after another for 5 years, that's going to put a big, load on your severance handling system. Then you're also going to have to pay the health insurance for those teachers for those 5 years that they leave early, on top of paying your health insurance for everybody that's in the system when you hire the replacements. So you're going to have higher costs. So you need to do all of those things before you agree to this.
Just for the schools, Dave, just so you're aware that we're a regional district, so all that financing is done by the regional district, voted on within each town. So a little bit different model, but
no, what I'm getting at is you are on the hook for 61% of it roughly.
Oh, yeah.
So it's something you really want to be involved in. And I believe the town manager and the select board and your representatives on the school committee need to come together to understand all these goals and make sure that something like this doesn't happen without the proper thought. Because if they agree to that and all of a sudden you're whacked with another $500,000 a year on your school budget, that's going to create significant impact in your city budget.
No
So-
doubt. Yeah, no doubt.
Thank you.
All right, Dave, my name is Mark Strout. I've been on the board since 2016. You know, I've worked for the city for over 25 years.
Yeah.
And these next questions should be, you know, as a city councilor, you'll understand the importance of them.
Sure.
What is your philosophy and approach in communicating with the town residents?
So, I think it's, I've sent you a ton of stuff that I've communicated. So are you talking about day-to-day communications or about policy?
Why don't we'll start with policy stuff, because the next, actually, I'm going to give you the whole question is, what is
Okay.
your philosophy and approach with communicating with the town residents? How do you respond to individual requests, and how do you communicate with the broader public?
Right, okay. So my first approach is that, you know, where I am now, I have a different role. So much of the communication I have is driven by the goals of me as a city councilor in trying to educate and inform and encourage people to do certain things to help the city in the direction that I believe the city council wants it to go. It doesn't mean I don't understand the other side of the equation and can take similar stances. So some of the articles that I've sent to you, you probably look at and say, well, this doesn't really apply to Dalton, but the communication capability really does. I think I've tried to explain things clearly and honestly, repeatedly to the public. I've tried to take complicated matters and explain them in a way that people can understand. And I try to be extremely responsive. I put a note on here. Outbound email from me as a city councilor, 6,829 emails that I've responded to in my time. Just as of today, I just looked at the outbox. So I communicate an awful lot. I've written dozens and dozens of articles for the newspaper. I've done all kinds of training videos. I do seminars in town. We have a gazebo on our green, and I've rented that a couple times and done presentations in there. I lay out the entire budget, and I've used $1 million bills that I give to people and say, okay, here's your $130 million budget. How are you going to allocate it? And then you get into quite a good conversation with folks trying to explain all the different parts of the budget and how it all works, where all the money comes from, where it all goes. I've done the same thing in schools and with scout groups. You'd be surprised what third graders can understand about a city budget, and how creative they can be about things. I've done a lot of that stuff. I do ward meetings. In Westfield, we have 6 wards and 6 ward councilors. They've invited me in to explain the budget and the processes to people. I'm on the Chamber of Commerce.
Dave, were you elected at large, or do you have a ward?
Yeah, no, I'm at large.
Okay.
Yep. So I represent the entire city. I've built websites for all kinds of things. I do bulk email to the people that are on my email list. I've done every door direct communications to citizens. And one of the things that you asked about was how to communicate in your town. And I think every door direct might be a great way to get the message out on a regular basis going forward. Every door direct costs about 19.1 cents a piece. So you're looking at $600 postage cost to hit everybody in the town. And then the print cost. So it's a great way to get periodic news out to everybody. Not everybody is on a computer. Not everybody gets emails. Not everybody reads Larry's newspaper, as much as he's a great writer, but not every citizen in town has access to that. So the Every Door Direct is a great way to do some things. What else? I've also formed a Taxpayers Association in town. So I was one of the founding members. Over the years, a lot of people wanted to be more active in city government, and they didn't feel they were getting what they needed from the mayor and the city council. So they asked about forming a taxpayers group, which is it's a nonprofit group of concerned citizens. I helped them get set up as a 501c4. I was on the initial board and have helped them learn a lot about the budget and the processes and how everything works. I've done a lot of types of communication type things.
Describe your how you would communicate with elected town officials and appointed committee volunteers.
Okay. So again, this is different for every town. In your case, it sounds like you want the town manager to be the point person, and that the select board approves and denies and advises the town manager. In some places that doesn't happen. In some cases, like I saw Bob the other night, Bob, you offered to be the middleman in a personality dispute, let's call it. That doesn't always happen. Some people want the town manager to do everything. Some people want the select board to do everything. So in your case, it sounds like you want the town manager to do a lot of this. And I think it depends on what the issues are and the goals are. You asked about elected. So in your case, your finance committee is elected, select board, planning board, town clerk. The way to communicate with those people is a lot different than the boards and commissions that are under the control of the town manager, right? So the town manager has more control over those boards and commissions and interaction. The elected boards and commissions, we have to agree on what the goals are and help share information and share progress so that we do what's best for the town. But I don't think the town manager can tell the finance committee what to do. I think that he has to work with them to explain the situation, to make sure everybody understands the goals. They know the underlying financial math and situation. In your case, they really do, by the way. You have a really good, strong finance team. And I'll show you one of the things I didn't show you earlier. Just take a, you got a minute, right? Okay. So one of the things that's very similar to Westfield is this graph here. This shows your levy. The bottom line is your actual levy, how much you collect in taxes. The blue line is your levy limit, and the red line is your levy ceiling. This little gap they created here a few years ago is the exact same thing I did in Westfield. So I thought it was kind of interesting when I was doing some research on you. Your finance team did the exact same thing I did in Westfield. This has saved you about $4 million here. This area between the green line and the blue line represents taxes you didn't charge people. And so you saved them about $4 million. And that's great for the citizens. If you wanted to, you could have gone to the blue line and stuck that money in your stabilization account or your free cash accounts. But you chose to do the right thing and I think save the citizens money and avoid hitting this levy ceiling. You're getting close to your levy ceiling like Westfield and many other towns. And your team has done some of the same exact things that I've done in Westfield. That's one of the things that I found very attractive. I think I'm very comfortable with the processes you guys use, the decisions that Mr. Walto and the finance team have made over the years. I think are very, very appropriate. So I'm happy with that. Did I take care of your question?
Yeah, all set. Thanks.
Okay,
Dave.
thanks.
Hey, Dan, you're up, buddy.
All righty. My name is Dan Esco. Been on the board for about 7 months now. Served on the planning board for 5 years as well, and have lived in town for about 13 years. My day job is a loan officer with a local mortgage company here in town. What core values do you rely on when facing difficult professional decisions on the job? And please give an example or two.
Sure. So I think, the main core value is trust and confidence, for people. I'll find which question that was on my number here. But I think the core values are, you have to be fair with people. You have to be honest with everybody. You have to have, good expectations. And you have to communicate well and demonstrate leadership in a fair way. I think that's something that's very important. And everybody needs to be on the same team. Everybody needs to be rowing in the same direction. And I think that's an important part of the values. If you ask, underlying values in the way of adjectives, I think, you think of all the good things to do with Boy Scouts, and that's me. People call me, you're such a Boy Scout, or you're such a adjective Boy Scout sometimes. But it's true. I try to, live by those values, and I think those are great values for dealing with other people and dealing with the community at large.
Could you provide just one example of a difficult decision and how some of your core values influence that decision?
Sure. I think, well, there's a lot, so I'll just pick one of them. So a difficult decision is always a termination. And over the years, I've had to terminate, a few people. It's never a fun thing. It's never, pleasant for anybody. And particularly in a small company, it's impactful because you become very friendly with the people you work with and that trust you for employment. But there have been cases where I've had to fire people, and you have to follow the rules and you have to be compassionate. There are some cases, that you have to kind of be flexible on. I've had a couple where, there's substance abuse, for example, and an employee who has substance abuse problems, you really feel bad for them, but you have to do what's right for the employer and what's right for everybody else that is affected by that employee. So in the city and town governments, there's a process, with an EAP program or warning system, that kind of stuff. In one case at Bay State Gas, before I was self-employed, we had to fire somebody, and he wasn't my employee directly, but he was on the team that reported to me as a supervisor. And he had a couple of DUIs, and they gave him a chance, and then he got another DUI, and the state pulled his license, but he continued to drive company vehicles without telling the company. And gigantic liabilities there. And they let him go. Well, a couple of days later, he committed suicide. So it's very impactful when you think about what happens when somebody lets go. So I always think about that case, when we are letting people go, which doesn't happen that often, but it does happen. And there are times we have to get rid of somebody. Another employee I had in my company had substance abuse issues, and things started disappearing and money started disappearing. And, you have to follow the rules. We got the lawyers involved, and, you had to write things up and document things and question things and review videos and follow the process. But eventually I had to get rid of him. And it wasn't an easy thing. And his family was devastated. He was devastated. I lost a great employee. Well, he was great while he wasn't under abusing certain things. But it wasn't fun for anybody. So I had to do that. On the city side, I could tell you an example of a hard choice. We have a polluted water problem in Westfield. We have an aquifer that's underneath an Air Force base, and it got polluted by PFAS. You've probably heard about that in other parts of the country where there's pollutants coming down from firefighting foam and other things into the water. We wanted to clean up the water and provide citizens with the right, supply of water that was clean and safe. The water department in the city requested bonding for $15 million to build a treatment plant adjacent to the aquifer to filter the water. There was a lot of contention in town by people saying, no matter how much you treat it, it's still going to be dirty water. And we don't want that. We want you to go find another source of water. And then there was the group of the scientists and the water experts saying, no, this happens all over the country. And the way to do it is you build a treatment plant. And we got approval from the state, the EPA and others that approved our design for this water treatment plant. But the vote came to my committee for the $15 million approval, and we wouldn't give the approval unless we got questions answered to make everybody in town comfortable that this was the right solution. That the people that were paying the bonding bill wanted to make sure that this thing was actually going to work. So it came out of our committee with a negative recommendation. It failed at council 7-6. We have a 13-member council, and I voted no. I was the deciding vote to vote no against this $15 million bond. Well, half the town was cheering for me, saying, yeah, you saved us $15 million. And the water people are saying, what the hell are you thinking? We need this filtering system to provide water to town. And what we decided to do to fix it is that I wanted them to answer the questions to satisfy the inquiries from the people and make sure that they all felt that this was the right solution. So I made a motion to what's called a motion to reconsider it. And before we did that, I talked to the mayor, I talked to the water department, the water commission, all the outside experts. We brought in Ty and Bond and other water, the water consultants. And we had a hearing, much like you'd see in the Senate in Washington, D.C. We had all these people on a table in front of us, and we allowed the public to send us questions in advance. And then I took the lead with the chair of the L&O committee, Legislation and Boarding Committee, and we questioned this team of people thoroughly. We asked every question. We didn't let them skip a question. We answered everything that the citizens wanted to know. And after all of that, I determined that, yes, we had the right solution. These people were the experts in their field all over the country. They gave us the right advice, and I flipped my vote and the bond got approved. And I convinced 2 others because it required 9 at the time. So it's, you know, it happened. I think it was a very contentious issue. 15 million bucks is a lot of money, and people want to make sure they have clean drink water. So it was a very, very hot issue. And I think having, you know, me being kind of calm and coordinating about, you know, the right people helped make a huge difference. So I think that's another great example.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is a little broad, but
Yeah.
can you give an example of a mistake you've made in the past, what you did to overcome the challenge, or what you learned from making that mistake? It can be professional or personal. Professional may be more relevant, but whatever you'd like.
Sure. I'll give you a couple. So I'm looking at your clock. You want to end at 7:15 or so? 7:20?
There's no time limit.
Okay. All right. So I tend to get going sometimes. So I think, you know, early on, first I got into, you know, city council business like many of you. I wanted to be active in town. There was an issue that was, you know, important to me. And I used to be, you know, sitting at home watching these council meetings, swearing at the TV, you know. So finally I said, it's time to get involved and be, you know, active in the community. I've certainly been active as a volunteer in other places, but I decided to run. And one of the things I learned early on is that you can't trust everybody. I hate to say it, but I'm a trusting person. I love to look at, you know, people and shake their hand and have a deal and make sure that it, you know, we can trust all the parties. And in politics, you know, it's a game to some people. They try to manipulate you and they try to move things around and they make promises that you don't keep. So after getting burned a couple times, you know, from people I thought were very honest, I've kind of changed my tact. I'm very trusting, but now I'm kind of trust but verify, you know, and make sure you have a backup plan, because I've gone into meetings where, you know, it was a very close vote and I counted up votes in the hallway, you know, from people that I was hoping to have vote my way or the other way. And they'd shake my hand and lie right to my face and go in the meeting and vote a different way. That creates a real problem. So now I usually have backup plans for things that are important to me. I want to make sure we have enough votes. I want to make sure everybody has the right information. And I always look for what the underlying spin might be from different people. You know, we have some people that want these labor contracts signed, for example, without doing the homework. Well, they have some very good reasons for that because they have friends and family in the unions and they want to get these things pushed through. So I always like trust but verify and have a backup plan. In private business, about 15 years ago, I had a lot of eggs in one basket, you'd call it. I had a very large set of contracts with one company. The company was in the telecom space. And when WorldCom went under, it killed the whole telecom industry. And they lost venture funding, they lost money. This company, you know, I was on pace at $110,000 a month in consulting fees for them. And the payments started stretching out. And eventually they ended up going bankrupt. And that cost me a lot of money. I lost $180,000 in real money and even more in expected income. And it took years to straighten out. I had to lay off a bunch of people who were very good people, but because the work went away, we had to have layoffs. So now I'm much more diversified. I have a broader base, you know, over the last few years. And as I said, I've kind of been coasting down the last 2 years into what I call, you know, a lifestyle business where I have, you know, a smaller number of customers, but still some variety. I don't have all my eggs in one basket anymore. So I think that's a good example on the private side.
Thank you. And finally, what would your current colleagues say about your management style?
Right. So I'm pretty calm, I think. You know, I specifically about management, again, I want to make sure we all understand what the goals are and that people understand their place in the system and that they all can do their job the right way. I'm creative in the way I do things. I've given you a couple examples, creative solutions, but there are many, many more. I'm very well prepared almost all the time. You know, I've spent, you know, many, many days researching Dalton before I decided to do this and before I decided to continue in the process. And I do that with just about everything. Like I said, I know these budgets inside and out. I know the state laws regarding to a lot of things inside and out. I'm not micromanaging. I don't like, hovering over everybody's shoulders. I don't spy on people and do things. I'm very professional and respectful to all viewpoints. I certainly think there are many things that people can contribute, even though they're not necessarily in that silo. So I think, having a meeting that includes people that may not be in the process sometimes brings in an outside perspective that's very valuable. So I try to do that when we can. I think in a town like Dalton, you can see that, if you only have 15 employees at City Hall, they all know something and they all know people in town, and you all know people in town in different opportunities. And I think getting a variety of opinions before taking action is good, like you did on the master plan. The master plan was created by a lot of different people that have different skill sets and interests. And I think that's important. And I think, consistency and calmness and structure are all very important. So I think that's what they would say. And particularly calm. I can't tell you how many times people use that word to me, and maybe I'm just quiet by nature, but I've heard that you're a calming force many, many times.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, just before we get to your final questions, I just want to go back to something that Dave mentioned, just to clarify. Dave picked up that we had we have the little attention regarding the Green Committee in our role in that. I think our role in that is just really help out our interim town manager. But if we had a full-time town manager in there, I think our town manager would be playing a key role in evaluating that situation. So I just want to, select board typically doesn't get involved in that. But I think in this situation, because we have such major change going on,
right.
And Mr. Chairman, certainly let me know if I'm speaking out of turn here, but I think that's the situation that we have. So I just want to help Dave clarify that.
Yeah, thank you. And I did see that. I know Bob was just jumping in to help smooth things out, and I understand the goal. And I also saw that meeting where there was some statements made about Mr. Walter that maybe weren't appropriate, and I saw the reaction of your city employees that came in afterwards.
Yep.
So
Okay.
I understand that, and I think I could help with that situation. I don't think you want to disband it. In my opinion, there's some great value there. Maybe you need to rethink some things and maybe change a couple players, but to disband something that's been pretty valuable, I think is a strong action.
Just clarifying, we typically leave that to the town manager.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Dave. Okay, Dave, it's time for you to ask us questions. What do you have for us?
So I asked questions and I'm not sure who sent me the responses, but I think making sure we're all on the same page with regard to what are the priorities is critical. Your job description is massive and your town plan is very extensive. So not everything can be done all at one time. And I think having the right priorities makes a big difference. So I was happy to get the response from you guys about that. I think you have some fires going on right now that any town manager would have to know about going in. I'm hoping that the police issue is going to be resolved shortly. It sounds like there's some tension with a couple other things, but I think those are things I don't want to necessarily ask you about on a public video. I also think one of the yellow flags for me is that Mr. Walter left with no notice and he had been searching for jobs. And I think that for me is a little bit of a caution flag that I want to make sure we all understand why. From my perspective, as an outsider and from what I've read and what I've seen in your meetings, he was extremely skilled and well-liked in most cases, and he had a long track record of very good service to the city and the citizens, and he was extremely committed. So I have a little yellow caution flag on my shoulder saying, hey, this is something you need to investigate. And maybe there's some good reasons, but maybe there's some misunderstandings or some changes that need to be made to make sure that this doesn't happen again. My goal again is I'm looking for about a 10-year lifespan. I'm not looking for a 2-year thing. I'm not looking to skip up and have this be a stepping stone to somewhere else. And I'm not just jumping at any deal that comes across. It's, like I said, I'm not shotgunning resumes out there looking for things. I'm looking for the right fit. And I think from what I've seen, that might be here. What I asked the other, the select board this, but when you're giving an elevator pitch about bringing business to town, that's one of the goals you have is economic development. What's the pitch for moving a business to Dalton? Why would somebody, for example, leave from down the hill? Like, 5 minutes away, you've got all those stores and businesses down in Pittsfield. What's your selling pitch to get one of them to move up?
Dave, we have a great industrial development commission, and Mr. Boyle's part of that. And anybody that's potentially coming to town, we hopefully refer them to that commission. And they do an excellent job talking about the town, what we can do, what we can't do. I mean, we have the major employer in here is Crane & Company, who makes the U.S. currency.
Yep.
And John, do you want to jump in there? And
just one quick thing. Very good question, Mr. Flaherty. What's our main pitch to bringing a business to Dalton, relocating to Dalton,
Right.
particularly from Pittsfield? And Mr. Walter was excellent at that, and he had encouraged several, not several, but a couple good-sized businesses to move to Dalton. But the main pitch that we have is our tax rate in Dalton for business. Excuse me, I did dental surgery, but the main pitch and selling point that we have is that the tax rate on business and commercial property in Dalton is half of what it is in Pittsfield.
Yep. So
Exactly.
Yeah.
Ours is $21. Theirs is $40 and change.
Yep. So I can
That's
tell
a
you,
lot of money if you're a business.
So that's what I was thinking when I talked to your selection committee. Is it, I own a business, and you don't position a business because you like the community and the people in it, right? You pitch it, because it's going to be a great place for you to do business, or it's going to save you money or generate money. But when I asked the three gentlemen that are self-employed on the select or screening committee, their answers were all about the community and how nice it is, and it's a great place to live and all that. But that's a different spin, right? So you have a different target there. And if you're trying to convince, and I gave them a couple examples, let's say you want to move Aldi food store, right, from down the hill to up the hill. You need footprint for Aldi to be there. Now that's something that might fit in Dalton if you had the space, or Hanush Jewelers, right? It's a standalone building down the hill. You want to move them to Dalton. For me, the pitch would be move to Dalton. There's less chaos. It's a common community. It's, you have the customers. It's easy to get to, and your tax is going to be half. To me, that's a good sales pitch.
Right.
The other pitch is to grow businesses in town. So the three gentlemen on the screening committee all talked about how great it is to live in town and be in town. So that market is different. Then your goal is to convince people that live in town to put their businesses there or to start businesses in town. And then you need an incubator process or some kind of education process to help people make that decision. There might be people in Dalton that own businesses in Hinsdale or somewhere else. So you might have to have an activity that convinces them to move back home and keep things in Dalton. It affects your Chapter 90, by the way, too. The more business you have in town, the more Chapter 90 money you get and other things. So
It's a whole different approach to try to attract a business to Dalton rather than trying to attract residents because of the quality of life. Right. Businessmen are interested in the bottom line.
Yep.
Location. And Dalton is centrally located in Berkshire County, the very center. It's directly adjacent to Pittsfield, directly adjacent to the railroad.
Yep.
I can go on for a while, but.
Yep. No, and I think that's good. And I didn't see that in other places. And I know that's one of the goals here is to help with business development. And, I did some satellite shots of Dalton. I looked at what your infrastructure is and where the holes are. I looked at, your ground, for example. You have severe constraints about what type of businesses you can put in size-wise. You have historic buildings all up and down the main street that you can't tear down. You have smaller lots there. You have water all over the place. You have cemeteries seemingly, in several places in town. You have the railroad on the other side. You've got the hills. So, if you think you're going to bring in another Crane & Company, it's not going to happen, right? You have to target what's going to fit in your footprint and what's right for Dalton. So that would be
exactly it, Mr. Flaherty. We got to concentrate on smaller business, 10 to 20, 15, 20, 30 employees.
Right. And that stationary building
located along Hubbard Avenue, East Housatonic Street, etc.
Yeah. And it sounds like Steve's trying to do that with the, the stationery building, and it looks like there's some vacancy there, and just, some vacancy, opportunity along, what's next to the Dalton garage is an office building there. I forget what it's called, but there's a, place in town that looks like there's some vacancy, and then the top end of Depot Street. So
He has the whole second and third floors available. Why? Because of lack of an elevator. But he is remedying that. And in conjunction with him remedying the access problem, the redevelopment commission is, at this time, and I can't go into details.
Yeah, I saw
a business to come and occupy that whole second floor.
Yep, that's good. That's real good.
Several employees.
Yep. And I saw that some of the businesses in town have TIFs or STAs, and that's an attractive thing to bring new businesses or to grow business. Yeah. And that's also going to help your new growth. On your new growth forecasts, you're averaging like 110 a year in new growth. A good portion of that will be the TIFs in the next couple of years. So that's going to help stabilize some of your new growth. Yeah, another question and I heard you mention this the other day, is the I&I, and it's a significant expense. We've been through it in Westfield. Westfield has a stormwater management fee that we've had to charge people. So everybody in town has to pay a fee to help pay for all this stormwater work, and it's very, very expensive for as a town. For individuals, it's not it's $60, $80 a year. It's not a big number. But it all adds up, and the I&I is very expensive. In Dalton, I noticed you have the water managed by a separate group, but is there any profit in that for the town, or does it all just stay in the water commission, the fire commission?
Bob could probably answer that better.
Yeah, it's pretty much their own.
Sure.
They're not under the 2.5% levy that we are, so
Right.
they can pretty much tax at will. And they actually do a good job managing their budgets and stuff. They have 3 water commissioners that run it. They have a great staff, and they do a good job.
Yeah, the water price is very good too. It's $3 and change. Ours is $4.32 a thousand, so it's good. But so they're not involved at all in the drainage side, in the sewer side of things. They just provide the clean water coming in. So does the city provide do the sewer, or is there a fee for that?
The sewer, all the effluent collected in Dalton, Hinsdale, and actually there is one house in Peru, flows in one pipe through the town of Dalton to the sewer treatment plant in Pittsfield. And they meter it, obviously. We receive an annual bill and we have to pay it. Then we allocate our Hinsdale share, and Hinsdale allocates Peru's share, and so forth and so on. So it's, there's no management involved, but there is definitely an oversight that we're cognizant of. And because Pittsfield is in the middle of a huge capital, I think it's $73 million capital expenditure over their sewer treatment plant. And the rule of thumb is whatever the cost is, Dalton's going to eventually absorb 10% of it. So it's an issue.
But you don't pass on the cost to taxpayers or residents. You absorb it in the town budget, right? Is that what you're saying?
No, there's a fee structure.
Okay.
Separate fee structure for homeowners and a metered system for businesses.
Well, good.
A flat rate for homeowners.
Yeah, so that I&I number, you might have to adjust those to.
It's going to be a toughie.
Yep, and nobody wants to see that. So. All right. Any other questions for me? I think I've asked.
Yeah. Anybody want to ask Dave a question before we get into the final wrap up? I might have had one. Let me see.
Dave, I think you, on behalf of the board, you covered everything in great detail, and we appreciate that. You're very knowledgeable and very broad area of discussion. And I think that's what we're here for. And I don't have any further questions.
Great, thank you. And I already covered about half of what's on my sheets. I have notes on a million things for you guys. So.
Okay, Dave, can you give us take 2 or 3 minutes for a closing statement?
Sure. Well, first I want to thank you all again. I think it's been a good process, and I know it's not easy. I I think I just want to sell myself. I'm hoping that, through this and through all the, the application process and all the stuff I provided you, you can see that I have the financial management, the communication, and the business development kind of things that you're looking for. I haven't been the executive before, but I've done all the executive things in a private business. I've made a huge impact with, government agencies, across the state, local towns, in Connecticut even, and at the state level. Some of the customers are gigantic. When you renew your driver's license, by the way, online, RMV, that was me personally in Boston, creating the RMV transaction processing system. I did that for years. I have a license plate that says Webman, because I was there back when, you guys Seinfeld fans, there was a Seinfeld episode where they used the Ass Man license plate and they thought it was cute and they gave me a Webman license plate. So I've had that ever since, but all the stuff you do with the Registry of Motor Vehicles was me personally in Boston. The cherry sheets that you can see online now was me back in 2003 for Governor Romney. They hired us to make that information available. They were spending a fortune every year distributing literature to cities and towns and all interested parties. And we created database structures and a live ability to keep the thing updated that you now use on a regular basis for your cherry sheet. So I have a ton of experience. I can go into many, many more government agencies that I've worked with. I think I have a clear vision of what you want based on all the meetings I've watched and how you all interact. There's different players on this select board, but you're all very respectful to each other. And I think you have a good mix of people that will make this work very well. And I think that's important. Again, if I didn't think this was going to work and I thought it was going to be frustrating every day to work with you guys, I wouldn't be this far along. I think I want to be collaborative with you and everybody else. I know, Sandy and her team has been doing double duty here. From what I've seen of what Sandy has done and how she's done things, she's fantastic, and I look forward to working with her. I think the ability to network with local, state, and federal offices on your behalf, is there, and I can do the things that you're looking to get done. I've worked with all kinds of boards and commissions, in cities and towns, and with nonprofits and business organizations. I mentioned, one of the things I'm on in the chamber, but I've been involved in 5 different chambers of commerce over the years as business, expanded and contracted and moved to different places. So in summary, I hope that I've answered all your questions. I hope, that you're confident that I can do this job, and I ask for your support going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks, Dave.
Dave, if you have any other thoughts that you think you want to pass on to us or whatever, if you all of a sudden you get home and think of, oh, I should have said that, please send them in to Judy Wagner. She'll get them to us.
Okay, great.
And also, if you have any other questions you need answered or something else you need clarified.
No, I think I've got everything for now. Thank you. And again, thank you very much for everything you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to click out.
All right, thank you.
See you next week.
You got it. Okay, gentlemen, for the record, I asked Sandy to ask the department heads if they have any feedback, which I think is important because they're going to have a lot of interaction with the town manager also. And if they do, we would appreciate it if we get it by Friday afternoon so I could pass it to the board so we can have it for discussion on Monday. With that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Hey,
Oh, wait a minute. I forgot to do the roll call, and I will need to do that for the record. I am sorry. We're going to back you up for a minute for the record that who was here today. Mark Strout,
Here.
Dan Esco,
Here.
John Boyle,
here.
Joe Diver,
Here.
Bob Bishop here, and interim manager Sandy Albano.
Here.
Okay. All right. Now we can vote on a roll call vote for dismissal. Mr. Boyle,
Yes.
Mr. Strout,
Yes.
Mr. Esco,
Yes.
Mr. Diver,
Yes.
and Mr. Bishop. Yes. Good night, everybody. Stay safe, Dalton.